You checked your feeder this morning, and it was empty. Not because the birds had eaten, but because the birds were gone.
Yesterday, they were everywhere. Sparrows crowding the perches, a pair of cardinals in the shrubs, chickadees cycling through one by one, grabbing a seed and darting off, the whole familiar routine playing out exactly like it always does. And today, nothing. Complete silence. Not a wing, not a call, not a single flutter anywhere in your yard. You didn't do anything differently. The feeder's full, the water's clean, the seeds are fresh. Nothing changed. So where did they go? This happens to backyard birdwatchers everywhere, in suburban gardens, rural properties, apartment balconies with a single suet cage, and almost nobody knows why. You spend weeks, sometimes months, building a relationship with your birds. You learn when they arrive in the morning. You recognize the dominant male who always feeds first. You notice which individuals are bolder, which ones are skittish, which one always seems to show up alone. And then, without any warning at all, they vanish for a day, sometimes 2 or 3, sometimes an entire week. And the silence is strange. It is not like a quiet morning where you just have not seen them yet. It is a different kind of quiet, an absence quiet. The feeder sits completely still. The branches do not move. Even the usual background noise of the yard feels different. Most people assume something scared them off, a hawk maybe, or a neighborhood cat that has been lurking around, or they have just moved on, found a better food source somewhere nearby and decided not to come back. And that last thought is the one that sticks, because you've invested in these birds. You've kept that feeder filled through freezing mornings and 90-degree afternoons. You know their routines, and the idea that they might have just decided to leave, chosen some other yard over yours, is harder to dismiss than it should be. But here's what's actually happening. Your birds did not leave because of something you did. They did not leave because of a predator. They did not leave because they found something better. They left because something ancient, something written into their biology millions of years before your feeder ever existed, told them to go. And when you understand what that signal is and what it actually means, you'll never look at an empty feeder the same way again.
The first reason your birds disappear, and the one that surprises almost everyone the first time they hear it, has nothing to do with predators, weather, or food sources. It has to do with feathers.
Once or twice a year, every bird on the planet goes through a process called molting. During this process, they shed and completely replace every single feather on their body. Flight feathers, body feathers, the tiny delicate ones around the eyes and beak, every single one is shed and regrown from scratch. Think about what that actually means for a bird. Feathers are not just decoration, they are the bird's entire survival system. They provide insulation against cold and heat. They give the bird its aerodynamic shape in flight. They provide the camouflage and coloration that allows birds to recognize each other, attract mates, and signal status within a flock. Feathers are not accessories, they are infrastructure. And during a molt, all of that infrastructure is temporarily compromised. A bird in active molt has reduced flight performance, sometimes dramatically so. Their insulation is patchy and incomplete, leaving them more vulnerable to temperature swings. Their color, which birds read with extraordinary precision, becomes irregular and faded. A male northern cardinal in the middle of the heavy molt does not look like the brilliant red bird you know. He looks dull, patchy, almost diseased, and he knows it. He can see himself reflected in every other bird's reaction to him, the way the flock treats him differently, the way his own mate looks at him with less certainty. So what does a bird do when it is at its most physically vulnerable?
It hides. Not occasionally, compulsively. Birds retreat into the thickest vegetation, where no predator can reach them, where they are invisible and they stay there, barely calling.
thick shrubs, the tangled interior of overgrown hedgerows, dense stands of ornamental grasses or untrimmed garden borders. They push into the very center of these spaces where no predator can easily reach them, where they are invisible from above and from the sides, and they stay there, barely moving, barely calling, eating only when they absolutely have to, and never exposing themselves on an open feeder if they can help it. Research from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology documents that many songbirds reduce their visible activity by 60 to 80% during peak molt periods. Birders who track individual birds using color band identification have found the same individuals present in a study area for weeks without a single confirmed sighting because the birds are sitting completely motionless inside dense vegetation, sometimes just 10 or 15 feet from where people are actively searching for them. Your birds are not gone, they are hiding. They are sitting in the same bushes they have always used, staying absolutely still in the dark interior of that hedge you never look inside, waiting for their protection to return. And the moment that molt completes, the moment those fresh, full feathers lock into place and everything works again, they come back to the feeder like nothing happened, because for them, nothing did. But molting only explains part of the story, because there's a second reason birds disappear, and this one happens so suddenly, so completely, that it can feel almost impossible. It's called hyperphagia, and it's one of the most extreme physiological events in the animal kingdom. In the weeks leading up to migration, certain species experience a neurological trigger that completely overrides their normal behavior. This trigger is driven primarily by changes in day length, the shortening hours of light in fall, the lengthening hours in spring, detected through specialized photoreceptors, not just in the bird's eyes, but through the thin skin and bone of the skull itself. The light literally passes through and signals the brain directly.
And the brain's response is essentially this: eat everything you can, store all of it as fat, and prepare to fly. The scale of this preparation is almost unbelievable until you look at the distances these birds are preparing to cover. A ruby-throated hummingbird, a bird that weighs roughly 3 grams at rest, lighter than a penny, will increase its body weight by 25 to 40% in the 2 weeks before its migration across the Gulf of Mexico. That is a non-stop overwater flight of approximately 500 miles, with no food, no rest, and nothing beneath it but open ocean. The blackpoll warbler, which weighs about the same as a AA battery, flies non-stop from the northeastern coast of North America all the way to South America, over open ocean, no land, no stopping, no feeding, for 72 to 88 consecutive hours. Scientists seriously doubted this was even physiologically possible until miniaturized geolocator tracking devices, small enough to be carried by these birds without restricting their flight, confirmed the routes directly and permanently. What fuels those flights is fat, pure fat deposited rapidly through hyperphagia in just a matter of days. Now here is what this means for your specific backyard. In the 24 to 48 hours before a migratory species makes its final departure, you might actually see a sudden, unexpected surge at your feeder. Birds arriving in numbers you have not seen in weeks, species you do not normally get, individuals feeding at unusual hours, very early morning, late into the evening, pushing each other off the perches with an aggression that is out of character. It can feel like a sudden celebration, like all your birds came back at once and brought friends. But those are not your regular birds. Those are migrants passing through, fueling at your feeder the same way a long-distance driver stops at a highway rest stop for 20 minutes before pushing on another 400 miles. By the next morning, they are gone, and so is the illusion that your yard was full. Your year-round residents go through a quieter, gentler version of the same preparation. Their feeding patterns shift, their social behaviors reorganize, and for a day or two they pull back from visible feeder activity while their body's chemistry adjusts to the seasonal change. They are not leaving, they are getting ready for what comes next. What looks like abandonment is the most purposeful thing they do all year.
Here is something that almost comes up in backyard birding guides, but that explains some of the most disorienting disappearances you will ever experience. Your birds are not living in your yard, they are moving through it.
In fall and winter especially, many of the species you see regularly in your feeder, black-capped chickadees, white-breasted nuthatches, downy woodpeckers, tufted titmice, are members of what ecologists call mixed-species foraging flocks. These are not loose, casual groupings that form by accident. They are organized social units with established internal hierarchies, consistent membership, and fixed movement circuits that cover a mile or more of territory every single day. Your feeder is one stop on that circuit, not the only stop, not even necessarily the most important stop, just one point on a route that these birds travel on a loose daily schedule, driven by food availability, perceived safety, and social organization. A 2020 study published in Ecology Letters tracked mixed-species flocks across both suburban and forested habitats and found that these groups maintain remarkably consistent movement patterns across weeks and even months. Crucially, the dominant species, almost always the chickadees, set the direction and pace of the flock's daily travel. When the dominant individual moves, the entire flock follows. There is no discussion. The chickadee goes, and the nuthatch, the titmouse, and the woodpecker all go immediately with it. When the flock's circuit shifts, responding to a productive new food source in a different part of the territory, adjusting after a predator disturbance, or simply following the natural variation in resource availability, the shift takes them all away from your feeder at the same time. That's why these disappearances feel so total. It's not one species missing, it's the entire yard going silent simultaneously, because every bird in your yard belongs to the same flock, and they all left together. And then the circuit brings them back, usually within 1 to 3 days. They arrive all together, all the same species, in the same social order they departed in, as if someone pressed play on something that had been paused. Because for them, nothing unusual happened. The circuit simply looped back around. And now we get to the part of this story that once you fully understand it, will permanently change the way you watch your birds. Your birds can feel weather arriving before it gets here. Not in a vague, intuitive way that some people claim to feel rain coming in their joints. Literally, physically, measurably, with a dedicated biological structure that detects barometric pressure changes at a sensitivity level that human-designed instruments have never been able to replicate at that scale. Deep in a bird's inner ear sits a structure called the paratympanic organ, sometimes referred to as the vital organ, a dense cluster of specialized receptor cells that detect changes in barometric pressure with extraordinary precision. When a low-pressure weather system begins to develop hundreds of miles away, the pressure at ground level begins to drop. The change is tiny, fractions of a millibar, barely detectable on standard instruments. Your birds feel it immediately and fully. One of the most dramatic scientific demonstrations of this ability came from a 2014 study conducted at the University of Tennessee. Golden-winged warblers fitted with miniaturized geolocator backpacks as part of a long-term migration study were found to have abandoned their established breeding territories and flown up to 1,500 kilometers south, a complete early migration weeks ahead of schedule, approximately 24 hours before a major supercell tornado outbreak moved through the region. The atmospheric pressure drop that triggered the response was less than half a millibar. The birds detected it, responded collectively, and were gone before a single storm cloud appeared on any radar system in the area. Your backyard birds do a version of this before every significant weather event. In the 12 to 36 hours before a major cold front, sustained rain, or significant pressure drop, watch your feeder carefully. What you will often see is a feeding frenzy, unlike the normal routine. Birds feeding at a usual intensity, species that normally avoid each other sharing the same perch, individuals who are usually subordinate pushing aggressively for access. They are loading up, storing energy, preparing for a period when they will need to stay still and sheltered and cannot afford to be caught in the open, burning reserves they do not have. And then they vanish. They pull back to sheltered roost sites, the dense interior of evergreens where branches break the wind completely, tree cavities where temperature drops more slowly than in the open air, the tight spaces inside thick hedges where the microclimate is measurably warmer than just a few feet away. They go still. They lower their metabolic rate. They wait. The moment the system passes and the pressure stabilizes, they return, sometimes within hours of a storm ending, hungry, active, louder and more assertive than usual, flooding back to the feeder in waves that can feel almost celebratory. If you have ever had a perfectly calm, empty feeder one morning and a frantic, overcrowded feeder the same afternoon, followed by 2 days of complete silence and then a sudden full return, that entire sequence was your birds reading a weather forecast that no app on your phone had published yet. There is one bird that comes up again and again in every conversation about disappearing birds. Not because it disappears more than other species, but because people get attached to it in a way they rarely do with others. The cardinal. That male with his extraordinary red, the color that seems almost artificial, almost too vivid to belong to something alive and wild, becomes a fixed point in the yard. People name him. They notice when he starts bringing a female in spring. They recognize his specific sharp chip call before they even look up from whatever they are doing indoors. He becomes, quietly and without any deliberate decision ever being made, part of the fabric of the household. And when he is gone for 3 or 4 days, it does not feel like a bird being absent. It feels like something is wrong. Here is what is almost certainly happening. Male cardinals undergo their most significant molt in late summer and early fall. During this period, the brilliant red feathers around the head and face are among the last to fully regrow, meaning there's a window, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks, when the male cardinal looks almost unrecognizable, a dull brownish-gray patchwork where that red used to be, like someone partially erased him. He knows exactly how he looks. His status in his territory is temporarily uncertain. The visual signal that has always said dominant, healthy, established is gone. So he does exactly what every molting bird does. He hides. He goes quiet. He stops singing from open perches. He stops showing up at the feeder in broad daylight where every bird in the neighborhood can assess him. He pulls back, stays low, and waits. And then the molt finishes. The red comes back, fresh, deep, cleaner than it was before the molt, and he returns to exactly the same branch he has always used at the same time every morning, as if he simply stepped away for a moment. He did not abandon you. He will always come back. So, what does all of this mean for how you take care of your backyard? The first and most important thing, and this is completely counterintuitive, is to change nothing when your birds disappear. The immediate instinct for almost everyone is to start troubleshooting. Swap out the seed in case it has gone stale. Move the feeder to a more visible spot. Add something new, a different feeder type, a bird bath, a suet block. The assumption is that something went wrong and you need to fix it. But nothing went wrong. Your birds are on a circuit, or in a molt, or sitting out a pressure system, and they're returning to a specific memorized location. If you have changed things while they were gone, you have changed what they are returning to. Keep everything exactly as it was. Second, start paying attention to the timing of disappearances. Note the season. Check what the weather is doing. Late summer absence almost always means molt. Early September or late April, absence means migration patterns reshuffling around your yard. A 1 or 2 day disappearance the day before a front moves through, followed by a hungry return the morning after, is barometric pressure response. Once you start connecting the absences to what's actually happening biologically and meteorologically, the empty feeder stops being a worry and starts being a piece of information. Third, and critically, keep the feeder stocked while they are gone. Your flock will return, the molt will finish, the storm will pass, and when your birds come back, they come back hungry, sometimes ravenously so. A feeder that is full at the moment of return gets filed into long-term memory as a reliable resource. A feeder that happens to be empty that morning gets noted as unreliable, and over time, reliable feeders become priority stops on the circuit. Unreliable ones get skipped. Your consistency when nobody's watching is exactly what builds the deepest trust. Here is what I want you to hold on to. Every time your yard goes silent, every time the feeder sits untouched and the branches stay still and the whole space feels abandoned, something is happening just outside your ability to see it. Feathers are regrowing in the tight center of a bush 3 feet from your window. A flock is completing its daily circuit and will be back tomorrow morning. A small bird whose entire body weighs less than a handful of change is sitting in an evergreen 20 feet away, reading a pressure drop from a storm system that will not arrive for another day and a half. The silence is not abandonment. It never was. It's biology doing exactly what it evolved to do over millions of years in creatures that have survived ice ages and continental reshaping and every change the world has thrown at them. The empty feeder is not a sign that something went wrong. It's a sign that everything is working. And they always, always come back. If you've had your birds disappear and then return, if you've had that specific moment of relief when the cardinal shows up again on his usual branch, or the chickadees suddenly fill the feeder all at once, drop it in the comments. Tell me the timing. Tell me the season. Tell me what the weather was doing when they came back. Your observations from your own yard are real data, and the patterns in that data are worth paying attention to. And if you want to keep going, if you want to understand what your birds are doing in the hours after dark, why you've probably never once found a dead bird in your yard, despite how many die each year, how something that weighs 3 grams survives things that should be impossible, those answers are right here. Your birds have a whole life you have never seen.